Surely in modern times, a Tai Chi master would be exposed as fraud, as a fake, because video exists and we can all watch and critique. And surely we're smart enough to spot a fake, right? Or would our excessive tools for communication really be used against us to convince us that, sure, we're the majority, sure, we're correct, as we just circle around the drain, patting each other on the back, saying, you're smart, you're correct, you understand the summation of human knowledge and the entire way the human body can work and function. One of the things I really like watching are these Adam Mizner critique videos, so these debunking videos, and I find them actually really entertaining. Most of them. Sometimes the green screen is worse than mine. I'm not going to be mentioning any channels or anybody specifically, because that's not the point of this. The point of this isn't to take somebody down and get back at them and start internet drama and beef. I really don't care. I just want to point out some really deep flaws in the thinking of this, so that way other people that were or are in my position somewhere on the internet don't get dragged down into these weird arguments that people get dragged into. It's like fighting with pigs. You just got to be in the mud to do it. I'm going to approach this sort of from what I see to be the core issue surrounding these things being just a bad debunk. I realize that most people don't understand why they train, and so they get pulled into these arguments with people that are training for a totally different reason, and they end up arguing with them as if they're training for the same purpose, and they're not. When I train, for example, karate, I'm not a fighter. I don't want to be a fighter. Never was, never will be. I have no interest in fighting. It's not my cup of tea. I enjoy sparring, and even that's not everybody's cup of tea. An aspect of, again, karate training is self-defense. It's not the entire thing. If it was the entire thing, I wouldn't say I teach karate, I would say I teach self-defense. And that would include things like situational awareness, and then firearm handling for those that live in a country where you can actually defend yourself. You can't both defend yourself and actively seek out fighting another person. You cannot have both. And for some reason people forget that and they blur that line constantly. And it's troubling to see just how violent people want to be. And again, if you want to be a fighter, more power to you. Go do it. In fact, if you want to do it professionally, go for it. Make a bunch of money. I hope you're successful, and I hope it brings you happiness. That's fantastic. I'll watch the fight and have a beer, but I don't want to be a fighter. I don't want to inflict nor have violence inflicted on me. That's the whole reason why self-defense is part of my training, is because I don't want to inflict violence, and I don't want violence inflicted upon me. I thought that was maybe pretty obvious, but apparently it's not for some people. The reason why I train, and the reason why a lot of people train, actually is to better themselves. And part of bettering yourself is to shrink or try to dissolve the ego kind of altogether. And so this posturing and going back and forth and beating the hell out of another human being really kind of works against that directly. It's like the worst possible thing that can happen out of that outcome. In fact, I don't see fighting as a win scenario. If I'm defending myself, the win scenario is getting out of there safely, stopping the threat, or avoiding the threat completely, altogether. The moment it becomes a fight, a back and forth, a struggle, now I gotta fight to win, I've lost. It's sort of like war. People say you gotta win a war. There's no winning a war. War is the ultimate failure of discourse, and fighting, it's a absolute failure of discourse. So I avoid it. Moving outward from this fighter's perspective, this also leads to this odd thing of it's got to be proven in the ring. If it doesn't work in the octagon, then it doesn't work in real life. I would like to know where these people live. Do you live in Detroit and everybody that attacks you knows jujitsu and mixed martial arts and kickboxing, and you need this well-rounded tool set just to get to the grocery store? And I'm not saying violent encounters can't happen, but again, you try to avoid that at all costs. If your entire perspective is fighting effective, then means it has to be effective in fighting specifically, not for like everyday life or health or well-being or being a better person. It's going to be effective at this one super narrow niche thing that's actually a sport. I personally think that using a sport as the gold standard for what's real or not is a massive mistake. And that's not to say that these UFC fighters would be ineffective at defending themselves. That's not it whatsoever. These guys are machines. It doesn't mean that that's realistic for the other 99.99% of the population. What happens in the ring doesn't match reality. What happens in the ring is two dudes that are just crazy athletic and trained for this one sole purpose to beat the shit out of the other guy in the ring, slammed together with points involved even, and rounds and little breaks in between, and a strict rule set, as well there should be. If you are of the opinion that if it doesn't work in the ring, or if it's not used in the ring, it doesn't work, I invite you to watch the old days of the UFC where those rules were developed, why they were established, why techniques were taken out of the repertoire of these fighters. And it's because people are getting hurt. You're going to debilitate somebody for the rest of their life. You're going to cause massive injuries that will never heal. You're going to cause somebody to eventually die. And there's no reason for that. These fighters want to live to fight another day. That whole thing supports the fact that it's entertainment. That's why Budweiser is sponsoring it. This isn't the gladiator fields. We're not here to kill each other and maim, and they're there for entertainment purposes. What this can lead to, getting kind of pigeonholed here a little bit, are actual self-defense techniques being overlooked or misunderstood completely because no one uses them in the ring. Or they have this odd way of debunking them. I'm going to bring up this example. Again, I'm not going to call anyone specifically, but this one has been debunked 1,000 times over. The eye gouge. Gouge his eyes! Somebody will put up a video or short, or they'll do some kind of self-defense seminar where they talk about gouging out somebody's eye and then reefing on the head, or debilitating the attacker long enough for you to get away. And somebody says, it doesn't work, and I'll show you why it doesn't work. And then they have their friend push on their eye with like a mild bit of pressure and then try to like pull the head away, and like, no shit, it doesn't work. You didn't gouge the eye. It comes down to a fundamental misunderstanding of what a real fight is, because you think that somebody's not going to hurt you or something. It's this weird idea. So an eye gouge isn't an eye poke or an eye scratch or an eye gentle pressure. An eye gouge is replacing your orbital with a finger or two or an object. So the finger goes in and the eye has no place. It's not going to stay there. It either goes in, it goes out, or it gets completely destroyed. In other words, it gets squished and the pressure goes out. So we're not talking about some gentle thing. We're talking gore and blood coming out of your skull. And for some reason, people think that that's not going to deter you as an attacker. Unless you're on PCP, I got bad news for you, bud. That's similar to saying your knife stabbing me in the ribs repeatedly isn't going to stop me or deter me as an attacker. That's just deluded. I worked in the ER for a good few years. I saw some injuries to the eye. And, man, even the guys that were really drunk, they still end up crying. They still end up asking for help and rocking back and forth in the chair, singing to themselves. You're not going to just grit your teeth and bear down through it. No. That's a delusion. Now, taking a bit of a step back, something else that ties back into the reason for training. And this is a difference of perspective. Again, so if you were training to be a fighter, This might not be on your list of reasons to train. That's totally fine. We have different reasons to train then. One of the reasons why I train martial arts, it's actually to help me in my everyday life. I train a lot of these arts to improve me as a person, to then improve how I go about my day-to-day business. That includes things like walking around the grocery store. Things like this. I want to use proper skeletal structure. I want to use my muscles in the proper way. I want to move well, so I don't hurt myself doing something stupid like slipping off a curb. If I fall off my one wheel, I don't want to just break my collarbone and be out of the game for months. I want to move well. I want to live well. I don't want to feel like I have to defend myself around every corner and I have to posture myself against somebody else challenging me to a fight or calling me weak for not wanting to be a fighter. And so I want my art to provide improvements to my everyday well-being and function, not just for fighting off imaginary attackers. This is where things get interesting, because seeing these videos, again, why I got into HME was because I saw these videos and thought that looked fake, because it looks fake. People make a lot of assumptions about what's being done in these videos, and I get it. But some of these assumptions are just downright strange and kind of wacky, because they morph them into their own personal worldview and paradigm, and then strawman the shit out of it, beat that strawman to death, and then posture around and going, see, I won. One of the assumptions is that these are self-defense techniques. That's not it whatsoever. These are not being taught as fighting techniques or self-defense techniques. That's not what's happening in these videos, and that's not what's happening at these seminars. There's not been one of these camps that I go to where they say, okay, now if they grab your wrist like this, here's what you're going to do. You're going to wiggle around like this, and then you're going to use, stork cools its wings to bounce them away and stop the attacker. One of these videos that pops up quite a bit is a video of Adam Mizner talking about his shoulder. And what you see is somebody, I believe it was Andy Mack, laying on top of him, or kind of laying, and just generally just holding his arm down. So people see this, and they automatically assume, I know what this is. This is meant to be some kind of wrist lock, and he's pinning his arm down, and it's some kind of, it's gotta be, he's trying to do some kind of wrestling technique, and he's just doing it wrong because he's like stupid or something. But that's what I mean, is they just assume, that's what it is, and he's doing it wrong, means I'm better than him and I know better. It's this odd posturing that happens, when really, that's none of that at all. All he was doing was just showing that if the shoulder is mildly isolated, to where it's probably difficult to muscle out of it, if you do the thing that he was asking you to do, you condition your shoulders and you make things the proper way for the Tai Chi body, it still works. That's it. This isn't some scenario where, what if a guy lays on you kind of and somewhat holds your arm down? What do you do then? You just do this. Ooh, that's not it. And to assume so is just comical. So these aren't focused on self-defense scenarios. They don't teach like that. What they teach you is ways to change your body to do the art. And then the purpose behind the art is to improve yourself. So it doesn't involve, you're gonna do this and then you're gonna get in the ring and you're gonna show those internet tough guys that this is real by joining the UFC. I know this next little part is gonna piss a lot of people off. Good. I want you to imagine living hundreds of years ago. Pick a time when horseback was peak technology, maybe bow and arrow or something. And I want you to imagine living back in that time. And then Army of Darkness happens and a car drops from the sky. And what you see then is somebody open up the car door, get into the car, and sit down in some kind of weird seat. And they shut the door. And then the car roars to life, and then it is propelled faster than you've ever seen anything move forward. Do you really think that in seeing that, you're gonna go, I know what's happening? They press their foot down on the gas pedal, therefore pumping more gasoline and explosive fluid into the engine, causing tiny little explosions that then pump pistons to then rotate an axle to turn the tires, create torque, and then move this metal vehicle forward. No. You're not gonna figure that out at all. You're not gonna see that and go, I can build one of those. Shit, you can't do that now. And we know what's happening. That is actually how difficult it would be to figure out what's happening in these videos by watching these videos. And then you and your buddies get together and kind of mimic what's happening with their hands and then try to trick each other into moving around because you got them to move a little bit, or you were able to like shove them against the wall. That's actually how different that is. Having experienced that from that side of things, the last assumption that I'll cover for this is the assumption that these people don't train. You look at whoever it is in the video and you say, that just looks like a guy. When I imagine somebody training or working out, what I think of is somebody with a six-pack, because that's the only type of training that you know. That's the only perspective that you have, is for fighting and for defense and pumping iron and getting really big. And if you don't see a six-pack, or if you don't see somebody that looks traditionally strong, you just imagine, they must not be. It's an assumption. And in this case, it's wrong. So you see a video of a bunch of people sitting on the floor, and then there's a man, just some dude, he's sitting on a couch. And another guy comes over and he starts bouncing him around like it's nothing. What people assume is that's what these camps are. You show up, maybe you dance around a little bit for some fun music, you get some Chinese music playing, and then you sit down and this guy has a hired hand and he bounces them around for a little while because that's what they agreed to do, and then tricks everybody into giving them tons and tons of money, and everybody just believes it happens and you move on with your day. What people don't see are the hours of training before that video is filmed and the hours of training after that video is filmed, let alone that it is a crazy amount of skill that's on display right there. Never mind any of that. These guys train like freaking animals. Most martial artists that I've ever met in my life, they don't train like this. I've met them, I've trained with a lot of people, I've trained with people for 8+ hours. They don't train like this. They won't. They would quit because it's actually extremely difficult and it's grueling. It's a lot of work. The more you put in, the more you get out. Don't just take my word for it. You might watch my videos and go, finally, somebody's telling the truth. You might watch my videos and go, wow, this guy's stupid. You might watch all these videos and say, this is a cult. Here's what I'll tell anybody in those scenarios. The only evidence that you should take is hands-on personal experience. Not video of somebody that you trust, not testimonial of this and this. Those are handy for getting you to take that next step of hands-on personal experience. And if somebody watches this and they're convinced and they want to join right away, that's also fine too. But if you really want proof of it being real or not real, don't accept anything other than you going and getting hands-on personal experience. And by that, I don't mean challenging them to a fight. That is pathetic, and I'll get there in a minute. The reason why I say that is because no matter what evidence is put out there, the goalposts will shift, no matter what. I have had people tell me, no, I accept evidence. It's just they don't put forth any evidence, and they just keep running away every time I challenge them. It's weird. Yeah, all you're showing is that you're unwilling to actually go try and that you're a bully. They will say, they don't show any videos of it working on somebody that's not compliant. Oh, what if they did this video and they didn't agree to jump around like an idiot? I hate to tell you, but those people in the video that are jumping around and being bounced all over the place and flung like bags in a hurricane, they don't know what's about to happen to them when that happens. There's no conversation that happens of, hey, okay, when that camera starts up, here's what I want you to do. I want you to hop a little bit that way and then just like stumble backwards and fall on your ass. Okay, ready? And go. Whoa, and does it. That never happens, okay? That person that's being flung isn't compliant. They're not agreeing to go do this thing and look like an asshole on the internet. No, it just happens. There's not a choice. Compliance or not, it doesn't matter. The next thing then that they will say, because videos of people being non-compliant pop up all the time, because that's kind of all the ones that are out there, they'll then say, well, I need to see it on a pro fighter. They're not even saying I need to see it work in a fight. That's a whole different goalpost. But they want to see it. I want to see it on somebody I trust to not be compliant. Somebody I know that is physically capable, and I know won't bullshit me. Maybe like Lyoto Machida? Maybe like the world's strongest man? Well, what happens then? And of course, mind you, the documentary is really hard to find for some reason. I'm not advocating piracy or anything. That's all I'm going to say on that one. Really funny that as soon as video footage comes out of these people being tossed around like they're small children, immediately they jump to, but they were paid. Oh, no shit. If I was some big shot celebrity, if I was a professional fighter that got paid millions of dollars to appear in a ring, sponsored by all these huge corporations to beat the shit out of another guy, and if you want me to appear in your production, you're gonna pay me money. That's just how that works. You're not gonna just appear in somebody's documentary film where they make money off of you for free. Especially if it's voiced by Morgan Freeman. Are you kidding me? There are production costs at the very least to cover. So yeah, no kidding they got paid for it, as well they should. Now of course, the actual accusation that they don't really say is that they're paid shills. And that's a totally different, kind of sinister one if you really think about it. You're calling that person a liar for money. Sure, you can call anybody that, really, as soon as they disagree with you, which most people on the internet do. Okay, it's just another case of the goalposts are shifting. It's fine that you don't believe that. I don't care if you think that everybody is just a paid shill at that point, and you're really the only person that can decipher reality from fiction anymore, and everybody else, sure, that's fine. This is the one that it actually boils down to. And I hear this a lot of people challenging Adam Mizner to a fight, as if this person who's never heard of you, you want them to fly all the way out to you, to then fist fight you, to show you that what they do is real. All of this adds up to the massive delusion that these people owe you anything. The burden of proof is not on them to come bend over backwards and then fight you. It's sort of like the old internet atheist movement of, the burden of proof is on God to prove to me that he exists. He owes me an apology. It's the same thing, just directed at a person. It'd be like me saying, I think Joe Rogan's full of shit. I think he's fake. I don't think that dude can fight. If he wants to prove to me that he can actually fight, he's gotta fly up here, appear in my backyard, and fight me personally. Otherwise, I think he's fake. You see how ridiculous that sounds? Why in the hell would anyone do that? And I also see a lot of people going to these affiliate schools or going to these people that train on the system and reporting back saying, I challenged them to a fight and they backed away. They had some excuse of some injury, or they said no when they ran away, or you haven't proven or disproven anything. All you've shown is that you're a bully and that these people didn't want to personally fist fight you. Imagine showing up at a karate dojo and you go in and there's the instructor and you say, before I try out your class, you gotta prove to me that your karate works. Fight me. What do you think that instructor is gonna say? No. Get the hell out of my dojo. For many people, the default position is to be guarded, to be combative with all this, and be really defensive about their positions. To not be willing to actually take in anyone else's perspective. Not be willing to expose yourself to being wrong, and instead put the guard up, get really defensive about it, and posture and try to pick fights. This is just a really sad adult version of my dad can beat up your dad. I would advise anyone that's sitting on the fence to do exactly what I did. Put your money where your mouth is. Go to one of these training camps. find out for yourself, to sincerely try this stuff out and find out, is it real? Is it fake? That's the only evidence that you should accept. I want to wrap this video up with just a couple more things. One, don't stop making the critique videos, guys. They're really fun. It's kind of my late night entertainment. It's a guilty pleasure. Just keep them coming. And of course, a big thank you to my Patreon supporters. You guys are fantastic. This has been a hard couple of years in a lot of different ways, and any amount of support is greatly appreciated. Thank you.